Thank you, Madam Chair. I think in a similar spirit, I will resist the temptation to engage or escalate partisan rhetoric in this hearing out of respect for the topic at hand, out of respect for the professionalism of the witnesses that are before us, and out of respect, frankly, for the American people, everybody observing this hearing. Mr. Wilcox, I've heard you say a couple of times now, not leading up with a question yet, the catchphrase I've heard far too often here where we just want to make it easier to vote and harder to cheat. Sounds good. It's a great soundbite, and it's not your fault, but I've heard it far too often in this committee as a pretext, frankly, from some of my colleagues who, look, I agree. We should be making it easier to vote and harder to cheat. If you look at the policies, if you look at data, we've gotten the harder to cheat part down because voter fraud in America is exceedingly rare. What I get frustrated by is my colleagues forget about the first part, the easier to vote part, because there are proven practices that are secure but can afford eligible voters more opportunities to conveniently register, stay registered, and actually cast their ballot, have their ballot counted. So it's not directed at you, but just sort of a level set for anybody observing this conversation, because I agree, you've all touched on it. Election security and ballot access should not be mutually exclusive. They should not be mutually exclusive. I don't think they are. And as the former Secretary of State of California, proud that the California model, I think, is exhibit A on how we can do it right. Every voter in America deserves the same protections, the same options for participating in our democracy. Now, there's a lot to unpack in the hearing here today. Appreciate the concerns that have been raised about poll workers, recruitment, retention, training, safety. I'm not going to ask a question about that. We've talked about that. We'll continue to talk about that. Vote by mail, an expansion to vote by mail, including the security steps in ensuring the integrity of vote by mail, like signature verification, opportunities to cure. I won't get into detail because we have in previous hearings and will continue to have the conversation. Even the value and merit of ballot drop boxes as an additional option for voters to return their ballot. The merits of in-person early voting opportunities that can be done securely and afford additional options for voters to participate. I will have a second question on election disinformation, but I want to talk about just security for a second. Not cybersecurity, not staff training, not voting systems and the guidelines and security standards for voting systems that we should continue to elevate, and not just the merit of paper ballots, but a different angle on the supply chain question that has been raised, specifically about paper. Now, a voter watching at home may say, well, wait a minute, can't you just go to the Office Depot or the local printer and pick up some reams of paper and print ballots? Not voter information guides, not specifically paper as it pertains to printing of ballots. Let me direct it to Ms. Patrick and one of the secretaries, if you want to chime in afterwards. Some of the technical requirements that people should be aware of in terms of printing of ballots that voters should be aware of to reinforce their faith in the process, including certification of ballot printers.
Thank you, Senator, and it's a joy to testify before you again. I would say that one of the things to remember is that the sophistication of our tabulation equipment is very high, and because of that, we need a high quality of paper, because we need to make sure that it's pristine paper, it doesn't have filaments, it doesn't have other things that can capture the light and in some way misrepresent a voter's mark as an errant mark, what have you. So you can't just go down to Staples or Office Depot and use any sort of paper. You have to have a specific type of paper that is of high quality. And that is always and traditionally been obtained here in North America from the North American mills. So that's part of the tension, is that it's a very unique paper product. It's a high quality paper product. And in this time when the mills have turned their processing over to corrugation, it's becoming more and more difficult to obtain. Yesterday at the National Postal Forum, many of the providers were telling me that even though they have 26,000-pound rolls, that will blow through in about an hour and a half or 2 hours in their processing plants. So it is of great need.
And as a former Secretary of State, I invite people to search their state's websites and see the public information on what the criteria is for the quality of paper, the certification process, who those certified printers are, and to make themselves less vulnerable to misinformation like we're looking for bamboo filaments here. And I'll just leave it at that. I think that is critical. And again, for voters to know, it's not just about how clear the print job is to circle the bubble, fill in the bubble, or draw an arrow or something like that, but the technology on the back end used to accurately count their ballot. I know my time is up, so a question, an ongoing conversation on disinformation. For all the concerns that have been raised, I think there's a unique additional challenge of combating, let alone trying to prevent disinformation and its impact on voters who prefer a language other than English, of which there are many, not just in California, but across the country. Either of the secretaries, can you speak for a minute just on concerns or recommendations on how to battle disinformation for linguistically diverse voters?
Sure, I can take that. Thank you for that question. So in Pennsylvania, we of course follow Section 203 of the Voting Rights Act. And actually, this is the first election where Philadelphia will provide voting materials in Chinese. So we have been working at the Department of State to support Philadelphia County, also statewide, to make sure that all of our voter education information is translated into Chinese, that we are reaching voters where they are, that we're partnering with stakeholder groups. But we also go above and beyond just the languages that we're required to provide language assistance in, and try to also provide it to the most common spoken languages within the Commonwealth. So there is still more work to be done, but we're definitely on the right track to make sure that we are providing education information in every language possible.
Thank you to Secretary Chapman. And before turning back over to the chair, just to acknowledge my experience as Secretary of State in California was the best way to battle the bad information that's out there is to try to get ahead of it with accurate information. We know that misinformation, disinformation doesn't just exist on social media, but is predominantly on social media. And from other hearings and other committees that we've had in Congress, the safety measures in place by social media platforms, helpful, certainly not enough, and that's in English, and languages other than English leaves a hell of a lot more to be desired. So we have our work cut out for us. Thank you, Mr. Chair.